Okay. Welcome here. For those of you already here and those of you watching this at a later date, I'm excited to be here hosting our third gathering of Your Empowerment Sanctuary, this safe sisterhood for people to gather and grow together, hopefully share together. And I offer live coaching that is something I'm really passionate about in helping people have deeper freedom around past pain and trauma, and maybe even some subconscious identities that they're not aware of that they're living in, or that have been keeping them stuck in patterns. So the freedom that I speak of, I feel like healing on every level is a deeper sense of freedom, a shifted perspective of yourself and in yourself in relationship to others and the world around you. And so I love offering tools and resources to others to help them receive and step into deeper levels of freedom and perspectives that are going to be more empowering and bring more clarity and purpose to their lives. So, welcome here. I'm going to speak a little bit about, I'm not a huge fan of New Year's resolutions, but I am a fan of intentions, and I guess maybe I need to explain that a little bit. For me, goals um, bring up this idea of an over-efforted striving, and the energy behind that feels a little bit sticky for me because I used to push myself and over effort so much in my life. And so the ease that comes with the idea of setting an intention for something, the energy behind that feels for me like a place of abundance, not lack, that I am in alignment with all that is in order to reach a deeper, I guess, expression of self as I intend to live my life in a certain way. Then what I'm calling in isn't from the energy of seeking, but more from the energy of abundance. So if that resonates with you, I want to speak about intention in everything we do rather than living in autopilot and just kind of going through the motions, giving ourselves some space and some stillness to intend anything about what we're doing. If we are having a conversation with anyone, are we listening to respond, or are we just actively listening, being present with intention to really hear? As there's so many examples of this, it's presence. It's being present with the intent to be present and not be living in the past or the future. So, with that said, I would love to just start with a quick guided meditation here so we can bring a little more stillness, a little more intention around this space. I've invited you into this space. If we think about it, everything, the archetype, I love to think of the archetype of the vessel and or a container or a space that exists everywhere on every level. Think of it. Right now, I've invited you into this space. It's a container that I am holding space here for us to gather safely and share and learn and grow. And my intent that I'm bringing to this space is to provide an energy for all of us to become more still and more intentional about how we would like to move forward. So in this container, this vessel, I am going to provide this bridge into stillness. And I do so by offering you, wherever you are, I don't know if you're driving or where you are, if you're sitting in a safe space, to close your eyes. Feel free to close your eyes. If not, if you're driving, just tune in. Tune in with the intention to feel something and become a little more still. And when I say still, I don't mean just in our physical bodies. I mean also in our minds, in our thoughts, in our brains, and in our hearts too. Okay, so go ahead if it's safe to close your eyes, and just quickly, I'm going to offer you to become aware of your breathing. Breathing in with the intention to gather all of the beautiful energies that exist around you and breathe them in with every inhale. Breathing in deeply, and then on your exhale, releasing out of your mouth with the intention of releasing what no longer serves you. And continuing that pattern, just very naturally with no need to change it. Just be aware of gathering in 360 degrees around you, all the most beautiful light and energy into every cell of your body. And then just releasing, letting go, dissolving energies that have felt heavy or burdened, a little static. And as you continue to sit here and breathe with this intention, I invite you to imagine 3 pools of water that live within you. The first one being up in your mind. It's a smaller pool, and I want you to just observe that pool, that water. Is it stirred up with thoughts? How would you describe it? Just observe as you continue to breathe in and out, and just become aware that with intention, you have a choice to create a pool that is still. With every out breath, releasing more thoughts. You can come back to those thoughts later. Right now, just be here with your breath, with your intention, and still that pool of water. And with a lot of grace, if that pool does not want to still, that's okay. No need to try to control it. Just let it be. Just observe. Come to rest in that place. And then continuing to breathe with intention, I invite you to drop down, down, like a pebble through water, still water down, down to the pool of your heart, which is a little bit bigger than the pool in your mind. And notice what's happening there. Is that still? Would it like to be more still? As you breathe and release, just imagine this pool, this lake, becoming more still. And giving so much compassion to what might be moving through you, what has been moving through you. So much happening in our world, much devastation, so much love. Give grace to that pool in your heart. And still that a little bit more. And then when you're ready, drop down, down further, deeper down into your womb space, your sacred bowl, where there is a deep well and pool there. And allow that to still. This is where your creative force flows from. Your freedom, your ability to choose, your empowerment, your sovereignty, your self-compassion. It all ebbs and flows from this spring, ever-flowing spring. So just observe these 3 pools of water, bringing more stillness and with intention. Taking a few more deep breaths here in this space that you've created with intention. And just allow it to be. And when you're ready, come back slowly and gently. Come back to this space. You can open your eyes again. And okay, hold on a second. Someone is trying to get in here, and I'm going to send them the link here and see if this helps them. Okay, let's see. But so I just wanted to acknowledge what's happening in LA right now, the devastation there, and just the pictures and the images that are flowing in make, I'm sure you too, feel this heaviness around just the loss. And I know we all have probably sent prayers out to those affected in all the ways, and so much love. And it just brings this reminder of loss and renewal, that the cycles of our lives are not death, life, death, but life, death, life. So I can't help but think that this devastation is bringing forth somehow some magic, some renewal to people. And maybe it's too early to speak to that, but I can't help but feel that as I observe these things and even listen and hear some people speaking about their loss of so much, it's material things, and yet our attachments to those, our identities, um, our power, our safety, and when they're gone, how have we to kind of contemplate, how have we identified ourselves around these objects, these things, which of course are a part of our survival, and yet so much more than that. So just dipping into those themes of loss and renewal and hope for something new. Um, anyway, I wanted to bring awareness to that. But I wanted to speak again. We started out before a little meditation, this idea of intention. And to reiterate, if I'm really honest, to speak personally about this just for a second, a lot of my life, I feel, as I look back now, um, I spent not with a lot of intention, just kind of on autopilot in my life and not really aware so deeply of the choices that I had, that I was able to make, that I didn't feel like I had the power to make. And and it's interesting because as I've studied deeper and deeper, I'm sure you've all heard of Eckhart Tolle, and wrote, he's an author and a spiritual man who's written some books, and one of them is The Power of Now, which is such a beautiful book on the idea of presence. And this, I don't even know if it's an idea because it's a truth that time is relative, and we can't, the past and the future are something that we live in this time space illusion here in our earthly existence, but they're illusory in nature because time is relative. All we ever have is now. And so therein lies our power to choose in any now moment who we be. How are we showing up? And I've spoken to this before, but to to bring in the idea and kind of link these beautiful ideas that in any now moment we can choose to tap into that future version of ourselves that doesn't exist in the future. It can only ever exist right now. So how do we tap into the energy of our highest self? That that future self that has so much wisdom and compassion and self-love. She's there right now. So when will we choose in any now moment to be more aligned with her energy? How does she wake up in the morning? What does she speak to herself, about herself, to others? What does she think? What is her diet? Not just her food intake into this one instrument we've been given, but all of this is beautiful to think of. But when you add intention to a now moment, that is so powerful. That is, I believe, what Eckhart Tolle is speaking to in the power of now, is setting the intention to be present. And when we set that intention, it's not an over-efforted thing, which takes me back to the idea of New Year's resolutions and goals being this thing that we're striving for and over-efforting, when presence and being in the flow of now is never efforted because it already is. It's just how we're showing up. Are we intending to be present with our thoughts instead of going to the painful past and having that inform our fearful future. And if we live in these two moments, we're missing out on our now, our choices in the now, because we can't make that choice if we're living in these other illusions that only exist here. We can't go live in tomorrow. We can think about it so that that exists in our minds, but it doesn't exist in reality. So these are the things that I love to think about and talk about. I'm just going to riff here for a few more minutes, and then I want to go into live coaching. But this also a beautiful thing that aligns with the spirituality of presence and the now moment is the idea of quantum physics and coming in aligned with metaphysical things. So the spiritual will be the metaphysical things that we can't see, that are out of our sight and our touch, but are very real. And then the idea that quantum physics, which is based in more science, subparticle, subatomic things, and all of the research that's been done around frequency, energy, and vibration, and that like the observer effect, when we are observing something in quantum physics, those particles, those quantum subatomic particles actually change how they be because they're being observed. So that's it's such a beautiful, amazing thing to study, because metaphysical science and quantum physics actually support each other in what they're speaking to about energy and spirituality and things that we can't really see that are so fascinating. So when we bring the energy of intention into every now moment, that is where our power lies, because we realize we're free to choose in any now moment who we be. How I'm going to tap into the energy of that future self so I can be more aligned with who I truly am. I deeply believe that healing is not about becoming something new. It's shedding the layers of what we thought we were, how we identified ourselves, maybe to our things, material things or whatever, but that's not who we are. That's not who we be. We may identify ourselves as that, but who we be is we're abundance, we're light, we're limitless souls here to expand and grow with the universe that we're living in. One last thing I want to share is earlier this morning, I sat with a client and she had a beautiful breakthrough, and it spoke exactly to what I wanted to share today. So I'm sharing it with you. She is a single mom. I asked her if I could share this. I'm not going to share her name, but she is this lovely woman who is a single mom of 5 children. And she's a nurse, and she was having to commute a long way every day. And that was kind of problematic because it put her home later and she didn't have as much time, and she spent time commuting. And so she was looking for a new job. And she had a lot of hope. She quit her other job actually. And there was a little bit of fear around that because, she needed to have the money to support her and her family. And she also had a lot of hope. We spoke about this idea. She had several interviews, and one of them was with a job that didn't it the way that they were interviewing her and the things that they were saying about the politics of and their theory, the way that they ran their company, it had an energetic resonance of dis-ease, discord. It didn't feel aligned. It was incongruent. And she was aware of it. And we spoke about the fact she didn't get the job. And we talked about it like, if you can come out of the weeds of, oh my goodness, I didn't get that job and now I lack and there's fear. And can you feel the contraction in this, the energy behind this, compared to the idea that life is always on our side. It is benevolent and always working with us, not against us. And it works with us in how our energy is. So when she changed, we were able to, several weeks back, kind of shift her perspective. What if you not getting that first job was actually redirecting you towards the highest outcome for you, in behalf of you, with the energy of, I trust the universe has my back, God, source, the spirit, whatever you want to call it, is there for me, supporting me to bring me to my highest timeline. Can I trust that? And she sat with that, and she was really good at sitting with that. And she went to interview at some other places, and one in particular was very beautiful for her because immediately when they started speaking about their company policies and the their theories about how they wanted their business to be, how they were showing up for their clientele, the energy of that was very beautiful to her, and she could discern and feel it because she'd given some space, and she opened up to this idea that I'm always being led to my next best thing, and that rejection in the prior company had actually become redirection and protection from something that maybe wasn't aligned for her, and she could feel it, and she paid attention and slowed down with intention. She sent out a new signal of hope and belief and trust. And with that energy, she drew in and got the job with this new company and has been working there for this was her first week. And so we met this morning, and to hear her speak about how glad she was that she was able to choose with intention every moment she had those fears and the doubts come up in her mind. What am I going to do? I need to get a job. But wait, if I am redirected towards something else, can I trust that that is where I'm actually supposed to be? And she did. And she's in this new job, and it's 15 minutes from her. She doesn't have this long commute. She's able to be home with their kids more. So much beauty in all of this because she shifted her mindset into the mindset of attention, intention, and a lot of compassion and grace for holding herself every time she had fear and went back into that old pattern, which we all do because it's so human, and gave herself the compassion to say, I'm okay, I'm safe, I trust that I'm always going to be aligned with the energy that I send out with intention, and that will match with a like energy that is for me and who I be. So, with that said, I would love to, if anyone, I can keep talking, but I would love to, if you have any questions about this, if you feel so inclined, I would love either questions in the chat about anything that I've spoken to, or if you have questions about other things that you've heard me speak to before, I'd love to hear from you. Or if there's anything right now in life that feels sticky, anything in life that feels like a challenge or a burden, or like a roadblock, I would love to hold space for you and offer some, maybe just a little bit higher perspective or a little bit less heaviness. If you feel inclined to to be here available for that, go right ahead. If not, then that's okay. I will keep talking. I made some other notes here because I'm just looking at my notes here for a second. So Nikola Tesla, who was a visionary um, inventor and also a like a physicist, and he worked in with electricity. And he said this famous quote that I just love because as I go deeper into these subjects, um, it explains the universe in ways that I'd never thought of before. He said, if you want to understand and know the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And these are the things I was speaking to before about quantum physics, that everything in our universe has a vibration, like a personal electronic signature. We each, like a fingerprint, it's like an electronic fingerprint. Each of us have an electronic fingerprint. Isn't that interesting? It's something we can't see, we're maybe not aware of, but as you slow down a little bit and create more stillness, I invite you to think about times when you've been in a space, a container, in the presence of someone or some event, and you've been able to feel the energy of it without knowing that's what you're feeling. But there was something either off where it felt a little discordant, or where you actually felt uplifted and you felt embraced and accepted, like unconditional love and acceptance. I'm curious if you, Stacy, I see you with your camera on. So
Yeah.
if you, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. I would love to hear.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting because what you're saying is really ringing true to me. Because this week I went to Utah to a funeral, and I thought I was doing so well on my inner work. Because typically, when we're really stable in that space of not judgment, you just let that energy of just less judgment and less frustrating or less prickles or whatever. And I had to go to a funeral, and just being in the airport and hearing discussions, and then being in Utah and seeing billboards, and there were just so many little things that just made me feel really claustrophobic. Like, I can't even be in this state right now. It was really strange. The feelings that were coming up for me, that I grew up in that state. I affiliate and go to church, the main church that state represents, all these things, but just parts of the culture and the things that were being said and the judgment I was overhearing, and the just kind of maybe the shadow sides of my life and upbringing become more and more apparent, that cause me that friction, or that um those feelings that were just bubbling up in me, like, oh my gosh, like I need some fresh air. I can't even stay here. So it just caused me to realize I've got a lot more work to do on myself.
Hey, well, thank you. Thank you. First of all,
Yes.
I acknowledge
So
you,
that's a
Stacy.
personal that just happened.
Yeah, no, I like it's perfect. And I don't ever believe in any random thing. You being here and being able to find this pocket of time to be here, and speak forth what your experience was. Thank you for sharing. It's a vulnerable thing, and I want to acknowledge that first. Um, and thank you for bringing that forward, because it's something I want to speak to, this idea of triggers. Call it what you will. I used to speak to them more about like being messengers, and I maybe like that more than a trigger, but
Yeah.
it's being aware of where it feels uncomfortable and bringing compassion to that instead of, so there's the messenger, and sometimes the messenger, we will blame the messenger thinking they're the ones that triggered me and it's their fault. So we'll
Yeah.
point blame at something, right? When really the world is like a great mirror. It's very neutral, and it's reflecting back to us what's living inside of us to say, are you so sure that this is happening outside? Can you check what's behind your lens that is creating this message, this thing that's triggering? It's showing you where you're still not free.
Hmm.
So if you're willing, so this is the thing, there's the messenger giving the message, asking, it's an invitation. So if we believe that life is benevolent and we can trust that, it's always our ally. It's always showing us and reflecting back to us what's living here. So let's go to work, because if we're willing to, and this is where it gets really beautiful. This is my favorite part, because we are human. Each one of us has identities that we're living in that are below our awareness, subconscious, and they're driving our thoughts and our behaviors and our reactions about towards anything out happening out here in life, which is always guiding us where we're still not free, right? If we believe that, then if we can be aware, oh my goodness, this is showing me where I'm still not free. It's a gift. It's saying, here, if you want to do the work, it's right here in front of you. Are you willing to turn towards the thing you've been running from, distracting yourself from, dismissing it, and hold it? Our souls are not broken, they are whole. It's our highest self, and it exists right now, always. if we can hold the version of us that came to believe the lie about that we're broken, when we can hold it, it starts to integrate and stop being that shadowy thing that you speak to, right? So I want to ask you, Stacy, if you're willing, and I think
Yeah.
you are. So I kind of threw it out there. You were
Yeah.
listening. What is the roadblock, the challenge? And you came forward and you said, this is perfect. I just got home. I was traveling and had this experience and I was kind of triggered, right? Like you
Yeah.
were
I was.
saying, okay. So the trigger brought up something inside of you that felt familiar. You felt this before, right?
Yeah.
You said it kind of tied into something from your past. So I'm going to give you options here if you feel free and safe to share. Like, when was the first time you ever really, if you can think, your subconscious is working with you right now because it's aware, it's always aware.
Mhm.
We're just not aware of it all the time,
Yeah.
that you're doing this work. So trust that in the moment when I ask you this question, the first thing that comes up is going to be the thing that wants to be felt and worked with or held. So, if you feel free to speak that out, great. Or you can remember it and hold it in privacy. So whatever feels comfortable for you.
I
But
can speak it. Yeah.
okay.
I see.
So so to ask you, can you think of a moment when you first felt and were aware of that feeling or that something like that, that trigger?
I think when I'm really thinking about it now, I just read an article on the airplane, or before I got on the airplane, in the airport, about things that are happening at BYU right now where I went to college, and professors being fired because they have diversity of thought or because they support LGBT people, and many women are being fired. It's gonna make me want to cry. And that happened in the 90s when I was there 30 years ago. There
Okay.
were people called the September 6th that were let go for similar things, which I was unaware of then because I was so in the bubble of everything's perfect here. And
Mhm.
now I know there's a lot of shadows, and I reside mostly with people in the shadows who are hurt by the system and want to just love and be their supportive friend. Um, because that's where I find myself.
Yeah.
And I think having just read that article brought up my first awakening of the shadow sides of a big part of my life that happened in September. And the first book I read about, I'm like, what? This happened when I was at BYU? And now it's happening again 30 years later, and my daughter's at BYU. And so hearing that, what's going down, if it continues that way, that college is going to may lose accreditation. All the good professors are going to go. They're going to start teaching anti-evolution, like crazy stuff that just like made me really triggered. I guess that's the word. I was so frustrated and just full of kind of like angst. And so the discussions I'm hearing around me that are very culturally judgy or whatever, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to get out of here. Like, this is killing me. So I think that's it. When you say there's a time before, that's it.
Okay. So thank you for your honesty there. That's even a vulnerable place to go, I'm sure, if that's has been your culture you've been living in, and if it feels so incongruent to you, that can be a hard place to stay and to feel like you're safe to stay there, right? Especially with all of this coming up again. But there, I'm just looking in the chat. Jonica mentioned, she says she calls it a hit or a ping from the universe. It's
Yeah.
lovely because it's like it's it's reflecting something that lives here that wants to be held. So
Mhm.
with that in mind, thank you for offering. Oh, I remember feeling this. And I want to ask you, when that happened back in the day, you didn't have that awareness. You have a different perspective now. And so as you sit, there's this memory of the past and what it's bringing up now, and it's uncomfortable. It's sticky. You said all these things that it's um you support and it feels kind of open. You're more open now maybe, and that feels more constricted and closed. And
Yeah.
what's going to happen in the future if they continue down this way, right? All of it's kind of, can you feel there's, well, I don't want to say that. I'm going to ask you, how does that make you feel? What is the feeling that you feel when you think about being in this state of trigger?
Makes me sad. It makes me sad for my people that I love. It makes me sad for my friends, the people, especially a lot of my family members who are very, very in, that don't understand that there are hurts out there that affect a lot of people, um,
Yeah.
or could affect people's futures in terms of like job opportunities because their degree means nothing, or like these are big.
Yeah.
It's very big where my daughter's telling me, "This is a joke. Why am I here? This is like I got to get out of this place. This is crazy." Like, that kind of stuff. It just makes me feel sad because it's a school that I loved when I was there. Um,
Okay.
and now I'm feeling like I don't want any of my other children to go there. So it
Okay.
makes me sad.
Okay. Yeah, it is. There's sadness. So the three primal emotions that we have as humans are fear, anger, which some people would say that's more of a blanket emotion covering it. They call it a blanket emotion that keeps us from feeling the feeling we need to be feeling or aware of. And anger is usually based in pain.
Mm,
And the third one is grief,
mhm,
sadness, right? And here we live in this polarized world. Our soul came here to experience the polarity of things when they're stretched out in this time-space illusion of like love and fear, grief and love and and joy or whatever the opposite of grief is. Really, it's one and the same. You wouldn't grieve if you hadn't loved something, right?
true.
When we have loss, it's because we felt it dear to us. So grief and love, when we think about our soul and what we're here to learn, we see it as this opposition and contrast that's so we cling to one and we dismiss another, but even just that becomes like exhausting. When we see it as one and the same and one's not good or bad, right or wrong, they're both exist in this place. And as humans, if we can Michael Singer in The Untethered Soul talks about this, like releasing our attachment to that something is good or bad and just letting it be. It's called unattachment. And it's a state of being that you can be very present when you're not attached to the outcome because you're not
Mm,
needed to control anything. So
mm,
thank you for letting me go down that rabbit hole. But thank you for being able to, first of all, identify that it's sadness that you're feeling. So I want to ask you, in this moment of trigger, I'm going to take you through walk you through um, this modality really quickly. I'm not going to take long for those of you here, but I love that you're here and kind of witnessing this. I want to speak to the fact that um, I didn't understand the power of group dynamics in this space, this container that I brought you into for safety. Um, with intention, setting this space and bringing us together, that when we're here witnessing what Stacy's speaking to and what I'm speaking to, that there's healing that takes place subconsciously or consciously for each one of us. So I'm so grateful that you all are willing to sit and observe and feel what you're feeling as we go through this, because it might pertain to you. This might be something that lives inside of you in a different way, and you never know. And I don't believe things are random. So the fact that you had the time to come here and be here today and show up, pat yourself on the back. That's an act of self-love. And here you are. So thank you. But Stacy, so I'm going to ask you first of all, if you're in a space where there's three separate spaces or three chairs, that's going to help us. But I want you to kind of really quickly, we're going to go through this. I'm going to ask you, and you kind of went there because you got emotional, to imagine yourself in the trigger. So the seat you're sitting in right now is you in your triggered state.
mhm.
I'm going to ask you quickly. We're going to go quickly. You're doing great. But to go back to that feeling, that sadness that you felt when you were triggered. And while you're there, maybe you need to close your eyes and get yourself there, but just be in the trigger, how it feels, what it's bringing up that's old or new, and just sit there for a second and let it wash over you. There's grief, there's confusion. I think there's a lot of things there. Okay. Now, when you're ready, we're not going to stay there long. So I'm going to ask you to get up, physically get up.
I actually do have 3 chairs.
Okay, perfect. So in your, in your, and this is important because energy, everything is energy. The energy of an emotion is energy in motion. So when emotions come through, it has different frequencies. This is why we deem grief and anger and sad and fear as something really scary because it comes through really heavy because it's vibrating at the lowest vibrations possible. Death is 0 hertz. Shame is 20 hertz. It's the
Wow.
next level up. And shame and guilt and doubt and regret and all of these things, anger, they all are low. So we dismiss them as uncomfortable, but it's part of our human experience to be here to feel it and to let it integrate so it can go and not get stuck in our bodies energetically, right? That's a whole other thing. That's a whole other discussion. But so you are feeling this heaviness, okay? So I'm going to ask you to get up and go to the seat too, but I'm going to ask you to shake the energy out. Like literally jump up and down, shake your hands,
All
scream,
right.
whatever. I'm going to ask you to break the sensation, break the energy of what the trigger felt like in your body. Okay, now I'm going to invite you to go
Yep.
when that feels complete. Go
Okay.
sit down. And while you're sitting there, I'm going to ask you, this is the seat of the observer. And I'm going to ask you to look at seat 1 and observe the triggered version of you. But we're going to speak of her in third person. She is this. I want you to kind of observe and explain what you're observing her in third person because she's not you. That's
Yeah.
a triggered version of you, right? So I'm going to ask you to just kind of observe and speak out what you're noticing about her and say it out loud if you would be willing.
She is being judgmental of the people how she used to be. They're triggering her because she used to think that way. Um, she's sad because she knows and loves people who are LGBT at that school who now may not feel safe. She's sad because her daughter's there and doesn't want to be there anymore. She's
Okay.
for all the professors who have just tried to create a safe space for a population of marginalized people who are now being escorted out with no explanation.
Okay.
And yeah,
Okay. So we dipped back into some of that emotion because it is large, right? It is large. I feel it in you, Stacy. I feel it. It's been part of my story and my history as well. So I feel it deeply. Um, I'm going to ask you to break the state again, like get up and shake off some of that energy, because what I want you to be doing in this second seat is to really observe her as giving a little more space between the observer seat and the triggered version of you.
okay.
Okay, perfect. So coming back to this and acknowledging those feelings are large for sure, and you felt them. I mean, there's so many layers to it. This isn't just a one thing, right? It goes deep, deep. So this seat is also the seat of I'm going to ask you, and I didn't before because we were kind of talking about this, but one of the things that is really beautiful in the work that I love doing with people is holding up a mirror for them so they can see that the things that they have been seeking outside of themselves, whether it's validation or love or compassion, whatever resource they are hoping for to feel seen, heard, and understood are sacred needs. They never rest until they're met. And those are sacred, right? To be seen, heard, and understood, to be adored and cherished for the beings that we are. So the resources that we're seeking outside of us already exist within us. So right now, as you're sitting in this seat, observing that triggered version of you, feeling really sad and confused, maybe angry a little too. Um, what is the resource that she needs in that triggered moment?
Good question. Um, just getting away from the, at least,
Okay.
or
So
kind of taking a
I'm going
step.
to reword this. Okay. Okay. Yeah. There's that. I see that element and I feel that. Okay. Um, I'm going to reword this inner resource
Oh, okay.
that she needs in that moment when she is triggered.
Inner resource, I guess, just love and compassion for all people, including myself.
Okay. Now we're getting closer. The compassion and the acceptance of, I love that you said this, Stacey. I want to draw attention to this. The fact that you said for everyone else and myself. Everyone else, of course, because you have one of the hugest hearts of anyone I've ever known. And I absolutely like put a stamp on that. So, I mean, stamp on my heart, and you know that. And also this compassion and self-love, self-compassion for the parts of you, you said it earlier, I don't know if you were aware of it, that used to judge.
Yeah.
So, so what I want to bring forward here, there's so much here and it's so beautiful that this version of you that used to judge others, but really when we get really honest, the things we judge in others are it's because the lens we wear towards ourselves. We only judge others to the depth that we judge ourselves.
Mm.
Right? So let's take that attention, that compassion, that inner resource. So of all the things you kind of mentioned, a few things, what feels like the greatest one that you would need in those triggered moments for that version of you that's judging and sad?
Hmm. Funny because when you say that, it's like I wasn't mad at myself for feeling that. I actually felt good because I haven't been triggered in a long time about things related to this sort of thing. I've been really in a really good space. I'm like, wow, why is this coming up? I thought I'd done all this work to just
Okay, yeah,
have
beautiful.
grace for everyone. Everyone's at their own. We all see through the lens of our life experience. And I have a lot of grace and love everywhere I go. And I'm sitting here, and the people next to me are triggering me because they're literally this couple reading the For Strength of Youth and judging every person that wears a bikini and has more than one piercing. And I'm like sitting there going, I can't listen. Like, this is literally driving me crazy. Like, that's so judgmental. But I used to do that. That's what I'm saying. I think that's why it was triggering me. Like, I can't believe I was that person when I was their age. That's terrible. Like, that makes me so sad. So you're right. I need to not be so sad at me. It's part of my growth.
Yeah, you get to. You don't need to. You
Yeah.
get
Get
you
to.
love to. This is the gift of self-awareness. And this is, I want to say, the universe brought forward an experience for you to be more free. I
Yeah.
hope you can see that
Yeah.
because life is our ally. It is always showing us where we're still not free. So exactly what you said, this idea of deeper love and self-compassion for the versions of you. So now I'm going to have you get up and go over to the third seat.
Okay.
Okay. So this third seat is the resource. It's the resource that you said, I think you said, did you align finally? Did we discern or like distill it down to one? Was it compassion?
Yeah.
So this compassion that, and I believe we, I want to say it not in the negative. It's really difficult for us to give to someone else what we haven't given here.
Mm.
So it's so much easier to give compassion and empathy and not judgment, only acceptance and embracing when we've done it here to all the versions of ourselves. It's I think how is it possible to do that in a very authentic way if we haven't done it for all the versions of us that are seeking our own attention and feeling judged? And the judge and the judger, the version of us that judges and the version of us that felt judged, all of it. So I love what you said. This resource, this seat you're sitting in now, is compassion. Can you tell me how that feels?
Feels good, feels safe.
Okay, keep going. How else does it feel?
Um,
Breathe it in. Compassion, safety. About
yeah, safety is the main feeling I feel. Peaceful.
peaceful. Safety. Safety from what? Or safety for what?
I think maybe I live in a little bit of a bubble from not less so now because I've moved, but just safety from the culture of judgment that I'm surrounded by.
Okay. So I want to reiterate here also, when we have an identity that we're not aware of, it will be the world of words that we're living in. We're a walking conversation. The things we tell ourselves about ourselves and others in the world we live in, everything. And that is our view. So the world of words saying that there's this, and yes, I'm not saying that isn't true, but it's a problem or triggering for you because it's triggering something in you that still believes that, and this is where it gets so tricky, because where is our world if there haven't been people who stood up against things and advocated, right? We love advocates and we need advocates. And this is a both and. I think our whole world should be not ever either or. It's always
Right.
both, right? And
Yeah.
so this idea that this needs to be fixed in order for me to be safe or to feel happy or to be free, right? So when we can bring the energy of compassion, not just to ourselves, the versions of us that have judged that and maybe still do because it's uncomfortable and it's not fair, then we actually are bringing an energy of, wait, did I say, I want to be clear here. Did I say when we bring compassion to those things, then it softens it, right? Then we become free to let us have choices and choose to be free in every now moment, not having to govern that or make sure the outcome is the way that we need it to be for us to be safe and untriggered or not triggered.
Yeah.
So bringing compassion to all of that is really saying, I am free. And I know you've been there because you said, I thought I did so much work. Oh my goodness. But to be free to say, I'm free to let them be on their own path.
Mm-hmm.
That just as I used to think that this was right or wrong, good or bad, can I come to the other side of it and say, I'm in a new place. I have a different perspective now. And it doesn't make me right or wrong, good or bad. And it doesn't make them right or wrong, good or bad. You can see some of the damage, but if we really believe, if we get this higher perspective, so this is what I want to ask you as we kind of move through this, that this sadness, this grief, this trigger that came up, the messenger, the message, can you think of, so this part of you that wants to be held, can you think of some of the negative consequences that have played out in your life because of this?
Yeah, because when you do become an advocate and you speak up and speak out, especially to family members that you love, you become you become a scary person to them because you don't think like the hive mind anymore.
Okay. Okay. I see that.
And so, but a big part of me, it's like it's an inner, maybe it's an inner battle. Like right now. I think especially I've been feeling this come up a lot, like seeing Wicked and seeing Elphaba, like
Mhm.
they see you later, wizard. Like I'm defying gravity on my own. I don't need you or any of these people. Like I got it in here. Um, but you also have to be willing to maybe not have any more attachments around you if you are that strong of a person like her, right? And
Okay.
so, yeah, I don't know. I guess when I hear things like this, it makes me inside want to be someone that's going to get up and like tell the world, like, look what's happening.
Okay.
You even
Okay.
know this, people. Do you know what's going on? Because most don't. They don't read Salt Lake Tribune. They don't, they just don't know because they're not going to read it in Deseret News. So
Yeah.
it
Okay.
just is, I don't know. It just feels like I just want people to know that there are people hurting so that more people can be aware, so more people can help heal people that are really struggling. I don't know. I can't really pinpoint it.
Well, okay. So this is really beautiful because there's such a subtlety here in what you're speaking to, Stacy. So this trigger, this compassion, and your desire for freedom, but advocacy too. So it can be both and, but what I want to speak to is okay, there are the negative consequences, right? You've seen them play out, they're still playing out, and you have this huge passionate heart and desire and empathy to help people who are othered, right? It's very beautiful. And I want to speak to let's go to that version of you that has felt triggered, and can you talk to her about some of the soul, like if we come up here to this higher perspective, what are some of the characteristics or qualities that exist now in you, Stacy, because that old identity of I am not safe ever existed? What are some of the soul lessons? If you came here to learn a lesson and
Yeah.
that limiting belief was I'm not safe to be authentic or to speak my truth.
And that space is also that I'm better than other people and I know more than other people.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
ego space.
Okay. So we've identified that. What if we can go there now? Like we talked about the negative consequences.
Yeah.
I want to come to what are maybe some of the soul lessons your
Oh,
soul
yeah.
came here to learn
Yeah. So
that.
I learned to not have so much judgment, to allow and love everyone, no matter what path, what religion, what color, what sexual identity. Like, doesn't matter. We're all created equal, and we're all here to learn to just love each other and to have grace for each other, which I didn't. I thought I had that figured out before, but
Mhm.
then when I really had to deconstruct some things, that was my big, beautiful gift.
Okay. Beautiful. So, what I heard you say is that it has been a gift to experience the contrast of what you feel now. Because how could you feel now the height, even the depth of your empathy and your compassion without having experienced the other, the opposite of this feeling? Would you feel a gift without having experienced that? I don't know. I mean, I think that's why our soul is here. The limitation then becomes the soul lesson because look at the compassion and the depth of expansion and self-compassion for
Yeah.
the version of you that was judging,
Mm-hmm.
that you were better somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean that everyone feels that way. Sometimes they'll speak and it feels that way, but it's not ours to judge that, right? So when we start judging that is so wrong, it lives inside of us still that we're judging that still lives in us then.
Mm-hmm.
Still
It's just
not
flipped now. It's flipped for me to judge the
exactly, exactly.
that I used to be like that I was just in that culture where you don't realize you are. And then you have an awareness that, oh my gosh, I was that person. And I thought I was a really good person. I thought I was kind and loving and not judgmental. but truly I was deep down and I didn't realize it until I had an awareness that that was me.
Okay. Okay. It's a beautiful thing to be aware of, to be self-aware enough of and self-reflective and owning, ha, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
So I can't judge that version of me that came to believe something before she knew better,
Yeah.
but I have so much compassion for her, and I can bring that same compassion to anyone else who feels like they might be judging me.
Yeah.
Right? Like that I'm lost and wandering, or that I've chosen this other, whatever that is and
Yeah.
feels like, you can bring compassion to all of it because it's available as a resource that lives inside of you. It isn't something outside of you. When we first get into a relationship, they call it the honeymoon phase, and it's so beautiful. There's so much love. This person in front of you can do no wrong. But the truth is that person, we're not in love with them. They're not the source of that love. They are a mirror. Remember, we talked about this reflective universe that we live in. It's
Mm-hmm.
reflecting the love that lives and exists here, or we wouldn't be able to feel it for them.
Yeah. True.
That is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So that's with everything. It's with judgment, it's with love, it's with malice and resentment, it's all the things, right?
Mm-hmm.
It exists here and then it reflects out. So
Mm-hmm.
when we've given it here, it flows so freely. That's who we be, because feel how that feels. It's so open and accepting and embracing. And the opposite of that feels just the opposite of that, kind of closed and restricted and not sustainable.
Fearful and scared and yeah.
It's fear. That's fear. It's another base emotion that in any now moment, we can always have the choice of love or fear,
Mm-hmm.
judgment or acceptance, um, open, constricted. I mean, you think of these things in any now moment, we can choose. So I want to just kind of circle back around to this inner resource that lives in you. I know it, I feel it, I have felt it, and I know everyone who knows you feels your compassion, the depth of your empathy and compassion for all beings, all things. And so I know that is an inner resource, but I want you to know that that is a resource for you when you feel that trigger again.
Yeah.
Because we're human, and life is always circling. And this is the thing, we're never the same person. We're always changing ourselves, and our thoughts and our perspectives are always growing, expanding in this expanding universe that we're a part of. So it may feel like the same trigger coming around again because we're in the cycles. That's life, is cycles, nature, watch it, we're all part of it, but we are never the same. So when it comes around, you're like, oh, here it is again. But wait, you are a new being that has a higher perspective every time. And now you know what you know.
Yeah.
You're not stuck in not knowing what I don't know. I don't have the consciousness, I don't have the awareness, but now you do.
Mm-hmm.
That, from that expanded view, you get to bring that inner resource to every version of you that feels triggered again. And now that is safety.
Mm.
Now you really are safe. You're free. So I'm
Yeah.
going to ask you, in a world, what happens? Who do you get to be, Stacy, in a world where, in the absence of, I have to judge or I have to fix this? What
Mm-hmm.
becomes available to you when you're that's gone? That's absent. It doesn't exist anymore. That need, that heavy weight.
I don't know how that feels.
Okay, so there's a little more. You so even if you got a little bit
Mm.
softer, like come to the edges of, I have to fix this.
Yeah.
This, right? Come to the edge of that and give, like, soften around that just a
Yeah.
little,
I
right?
think I think when I come to the edge of that, it's not I can't fix it. All I can do is be a better version of me and to love everyone more that I
Okay.
know care about that could be feeling prickled by these things too or not. Maybe you don't even know, but just to extend maybe more love and more attention to those that I may feel might. be feeling sad too right now.
Beautiful. So, what I heard you say, and I want to shine or have you look in this mirror because everything you just said, I see you already doing. I want to celebrate you and the wins, maybe that you don't even see because you're already doing that. You are an advocate, Stacy. I know you hold space for beings and people in your life, known or unknown, some of their private personal struggles in a world where there's not as much acceptance, not much so embracing, and how sticky that can feel for people. And I know you are an advocate, so you already are a bright light of compassion for all the people. I'm hoping you can continue to give that compassion to the versions of you that still feel the heaviness around the idea maybe that I need to fix this,
Yeah.
something different. Because when you're free from that, there's a space that opens up for even more of your light to shine,
Mm.
because that's how it's going to happen. It's not going to happen with a fist. It's going to happen with an open heart, which I know you have. That's how it's going to happen. Your light will shine brighter, and people can't help but feel the energy of your compassion oozing out. And they have to wonder, what would that feel like to accept and embrace everything just as it is, because it is, and not try to fix it, not try to put it in a box, not try to change it or clean it up, that it can be beautiful as messy as it is. And that is true power. So is it true, Stacy,
Yeah.
that it's your responsibility to fix that or make it right or make it be a certain way?
No, it's not my responsibility.
Hey, with that understanding, what becomes available? Like if you had to create an I am statement, if before it was like, I am not safe,
Yeah.
you had to create like an affirmation of I am what now? In the absence of that belief that
Hmm.
I have to fix this. This is my responsibility. These people are suffering.
Yeah.
Huge responsibility. If you're free from that,
Yeah.
what do you get to be? Who do you get to be? I am,
I am, I have my power. I'm powerful. I'm strong.
hey, I'm strong.
Hmm.
I'm not unsafe.
I'm
I'm
not about it weak. Them, what they do affects my existence. It's that
hey,
I create my own.
yes, because nothing, no thing needs to be a certain way for us to feel safe. But we
Right.
believe that as little kids because there's an unspoken agreement with our parents that if they keep us safe, we'll be whatever version we think they want us to be in order to be
So we,
seen,
yeah.
right?
Hmm.
That is the primal wound because at its essence, there's a form of self-abandonment in that
Hmm.
we're too young to even give words to it. It's unspoken, it's an agreement. We all do it. And that is why being human has a primal wound. And until we turn towards that primal wound, we feel broken. But our soul isn't. It's our human experience. So this work is so beautiful. Yes, Jonica, she becomes the observer. She's able to just watch this playing out and feel safe to know and trust that your path, there are as many paths as there are people, and your path is your path, and their path is their path. And because time is relative, there isn't a future and a past. Our path, we all are expanding and growing in our own perfect timing. When you see it that way, you're like, holy cow, this is so beautiful. I get to support other people on their path as I shine my acceptance and my embracing and my safety and my power and my strength. That's the thing that's going to evolve, like lift. It's not the fist. It's not the sphere. It's not the contraction. It's not the I need to fix this. That is all not part of your path. You are whole as this bright light, limitless expanding being, your soul is. And she knows it's not her responsibility to control anyone, but just to stand in her power, sovereign, she who is one unto herself, free to choose in any given moment love every time. Because love is it already won. Time doesn't exist. Love already won. It's the most powerful force of energy in our whole universe.
And it feels so much better than fear or any of the other motivation.
Because it's like this, it's open, it's surrendered, it's trusting that benevolence, even if it feels sticky and messy, it's always on purpose. It always has a purpose to bring us to higher levels of expansion and awareness of love, that love is the greatest power, that we are love. We are connected. We're never disconnected. We only disconnect when we're judging or fighting or resisting, right?
Yeah. Something that came up, Stacy, when you were saying that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, something interesting when we left the church, or I could say when I left the church, and I was still living in a highly dense area, right? Because we live in Gilbert, or we lived in Mesa, but when I left, we live in Gilbert, and so many people, so many circles. And I remember always just feeling like I was okay leaving, right? There was never like oh, whatever, I feel bad or different, but what I was like is like, there's so many people around here who are still in that. And it kind of felt like that's how it was feeling when you went to Utah. You're like, you like, and so you're like, you just want people to wake up, you want to shake them. But you have to have your own. So then I had to come to, I can live amongst whatever, all in the middle of LDS and still be okay with who I am and what I'm doing, and not have to try to change anybody else or be somebody else, or even not be around them. Cause then that was still pinging me, right? At
Right.
least it was for me. I was like, oh, I'm like, I'm going to move to California where there's more diversity and right. Like, I was just like, oh, I don't want to be here in the middle of like all this. Cause you saw it so clearly, you saw it so differently, or I saw it so differently. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much, you see the control, you see things so differently. And then you're like, oh, or at least I was like, oh, it's kind of annoying. And I'm like, I want to be around different people that are expanded and more, but also I was like, but I don't have to be around different people. I am, but it's really inside. It was internal. It was like, I have to be okay with everyone else doing whatever they wanted to do, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
It only affects if I allow it.
Right.
It
Right.
triggers,
And
yeah, it triggers something that
because
wants.
yeah, in Gilbert here, I feel that. Like, I feel like you're saying, I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm just me and they're them. And I love it. Like, I've been doing so well. Like, so
Mhm. Mhm.
stuff has not come up for me in a long time.
Mhm.
All of a sudden, it was like probably the worst I've ever had. Where I'm like, oh my gosh, like,
This
there's
is weird.
conversations happening right here. These people are
Mhm.
literally talking about, like, judging
Mhm.
everything that people are doing. Cause, like, now the first strength youth isn't as prescriptive, and the girl was mad. They need to tell us more things. Now people are getting really wishy-washy, and girls are wearing bikinis, and girls are getting their ears. And I'm just sitting there going, oh my gosh. Like, it
Yeah,
turned
pinged.
what
Yeah.
major pink,
Mhm.
and the billboards and I don't know. I'm like, oh boy, I've got work to do, because it was eating me a lot.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, we all do. Even that
Mhm.
girl that's judging that the church should be more strict,
Yeah.
right?
Where I'm
That
like, no,
all of
people are
it.
open. What are you talking
We all
about?
have work to do. That's why this is so beautiful when you can get out of the weeds, come
Mhm.
up higher and be like, you know what? We
Mhm.
all are here to walk each other home,
Yeah, I
not
know.
turn sideways.
Yeah.
I'm going to
I mean,
change.
I disagree. I think we walk ourselves home. I really don't think we're walking each other home, not to be, but I think that's a choice. I think that if someone chooses, like if that girl was like, or anyone chooses to go, oh, you know what, Stacy or Noel, like, oh, I like that. That's an expansion. It's like anything out there. If someone chooses, but we don't get to control who expands or who awakens or who, right? We only get to do it for
Absolutely.
ourselves.
Absolutely.
We walk home, and everyone's home is different, right?
Yes. So this is the thing. I think there are as many paths as there are people, and they're all going, which I believe, this is my
Mhm,
theory,
mhm,
we're all going to the same place, right?
mhm,
How we get
mhm,
there, that in time, I
Mhm.
even
No
have a
time.
hard time around that heaven and hell exist in some future thing. If time is relative, doesn't that mean that heaven and hell exist right now in our mind?
Yeah, we
It's a
create
moment. Yeah.
Suffering, yeah.
Uh-huh.
What suffering are we creating by
Mhm.
our thoughts about
Mhm.
ourselves
Yep.
first, and
Mhm.
then how that expands out into what we believe about the world and others based on how we feel about ourselves. If we're at war with ourselves, I promise you, there's no peace out here. So,
Right.
so what I guess I need to reiterate, we are walking each other home, but I think more as an energetic support of love, like not
Mhm.
through
Like
judgment.
love unconditionally. Yeah.
Letting
Just
people be, like bless
Yeah.
it and let it be.
Mhm.
You are on your
Yeah.
path to see that.
Which is hard because we all have. And so then I would say, like, that's the ego. The ego's like, wait, I want to save people. I want to make a difference. I want to get out there, which is also amazing. Cause, like you said, I heard you say, like, if Martin Luther King wouldn't have stood up and spoke out, who knows, honestly, at that time, if his ego was there or if his, right, we don't know. But
Well,
we do
true.
know he spoke up. And so
Yep.
if we follow that
It cost him his life.
alignment.
Yeah.
If we yes, but if we follow that inner alignment, like, oh, I feel like speaking up, or I feel like asking a question, but really maybe more awareness of, like, is the question coming from the ego, or is the
True.
question coming from, like, oh, I really am curious. How come you think that? Or I'm curious why this. You're really coming from curiosity instead of, like, um
Mm.
people, because I struggle with that, like, oh, how am I going to help the world? How am I going to help people wake up? I just want to shake people because I have the ability to see into souls.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, like, if you just come on. And then I'm like, I don't know if they're going to come back 5 more times, right? Like, we don't get to say that. We only get to pay attention to ourselves. And we weren't taught that because the world teaches you got to look outward and help everybody else and do for other people and please, be everybody else's hero, but you're not your own hero.
That's
But the
true.
truth is we really are to be selfish, because the word became negative to me in a way that the world taught that. But
Focus inward,
selfish,
right? At first, right?
it's all self. It's yourself. Is you
Know
you can
thyself. That's what know
only,
thyself
yeah,
means.
you can
That's
only
true.
give what you have in you, right? Whether it's love, whatever it is, whatever's inside, that's what you can give, because it is a projection. And so if you don't have self-love, or if you have judgment of other, it's all in, like you said. But it's like, it sounds weird because the world says for so long different, but it really is. You're here to help yourself, because
Yes.
you can only progress yourself. You really can't. You have no control over whether we think we do over our kids or our loved ones or family. Is really, we have no control over them. We have it over ourselves. And I think the ego wishes that, like, oh, I hope I can influence someone. I still think that's ego.
Yeah. That's
So I'm glad you
Do you know
said
what
that.
I mean?
yeah.
I'm glad you
Because
said
the soul is not worried about the soul. Our soul is not saying, or spirit, or whatever, like, is not like, oh, you're here to influence people. No, you're here to just be you, and be your pillar, and that's it. And if someone decides, oh, I kind of like that, like, I mean, it's cheesy, but, like, go back to anyone, like, that kind of people made into a, like, what's the word I'm thinking, higher vibration souls that came, like Buddha or Jesus, like, or Martin Luther, Mother Teresa, like, ones that were just a little more higher vibration, that didn't chase after physical lower density things, right? That were really there to just show up, and we don't notice till later. But those, that they were never like, worship me, right?
Yeah.
Or, hey, look what I'm doing. It was really just that when they say, like,
in
you know
service.
oh,
And
yeah, like, just no, like, if they're saying, they didn't, I don't even know if they really said it, but it was just like, if someone was like, wow, I want to do what you're doing, because they felt the pull of, like, I just want to be kind and loving and unconditional and giving. That is just an innate, like, in us. But
yeah.
it was never like, worship me, right? But it became that because the
Yeah.
ego.
And thank you to speak to that. But I want to wrap this up because I don't want
Yeah.
people to watch a 2 hour thing or however long. But I wanted to speak to the fact you brought this up. When I really do believe that our throat chakra and our heart chakra are connected when we are in service from our heart and speak our truth with so
Hmm.
much compassion without the need to control outcomes.
Hmm.
There's
Hmm.
a bridge that is built energetically between these two spaces that when we are able to speak our heart, speak our truth with our heart, our heart says, oh, you're taking care of us now because you're speaking up, but with
Mhm.
passion, not screaming and yelling and controlling, but
Mhm.
intent and the energy of love, unconditional love, speaking truth. And when that
Mhm.
happens, that's what makes a difference. It's not
Mhm.
the ego, right? It's not
No.
the ego isn't connected. That's somewhere else.
Mm-mm.
That's a
Yep.
more lower vibrating thing, like you said. But so I love that idea that when we um, are walking each other home, we're really doing it through the support of love and energy of not
Mhm.
needing to control an outcome. And that's hard as a mom, right? As a parent.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really hard when you have adult kids. You thought it was so hard to be in the trenches with young kids, and then you have adults, and you're like, well, wow, okay, that's a new lens
Mhm.
of gracefully allowing them to have their experiences because you would never want to deny them the growth
Mhm.
that their soul came here to experience. And it's
Mhm.
hard to know when to let go, when to release those tethers, right? It's
Mhm.
different with each kid. There's no formula
Mhm.
like, oh, this is
No
how you
formula.
do it. Yeah. So
Mhm. Well,
um
and with people outside of your children, right? Still, like your
sure that
neighbors, your anyone in your work, like same thing that we just in my opinion, just because we birthed these children, do I believe there is something there? I mean, yes, because they chose you as parents, but they chose that. If you think of soul contracts, it doesn't mean you're going to be best friends with your mom or dad. Oh, they think that's a worldly thing again. Maybe the soul contract was I'm going to be a alcoholic or a bitchy mom or something, and I'm going to have the growth, right? And so that kid, and it's like people would be like, that sucks, but that was your growth,
yeah, that this is a no, I have to
you
say
know?
for watching, this is another
Mhm.
theory that some people,
Mhm. Mhm.
it's hard to think, and it's interesting because
Mhm.
there's the bus stop theory. I don't know if you've heard of that bus stop
Mm-mm.
theory. I forget whose book. I don't know if it's Carolyn Miss or one of these spiritual teachers, but she talks about the idea that we have soul tribes, soul pods, and
Mhm.
we're all,
Mhm.
whoever we're here is in our
Mhm.
relationship. They're part
Mhm.
of our soul pod, or they wouldn't be in our they wouldn't exist in our realm. Right.
Right. Like you and I could have been sisters, or maybe you were a husband in my past life. Like we don't know. It's a weird thing, but
Right, it's
I
a weird
have
theory,
a
right? But
knowing of it. Yeah.
it gets your attention. But the idea
Mhm.
of this bus stop is as a soul pod. We're all up there and we're like talking and kind of thinking
Mhm.
before we come down to this experience and saying, what is it that my soul would love to learn and expand
Mhm.
into this?
Mhm.
This is assuming you believe in multiple lives, right? Too, this is
Mhm.
scary. But um, the idea that someone would raise their hand in
Mhm.
your tribe, standing at the bus stop and say, I'll help
Pick
you with,
me. Yeah.
I'll help you.
Mhm.
I'll help you. I
Yeah.
don't know whether I'm going to be an alcoholic parent
Mhm.
or an
Yeah.
abusive partner or
Yeah.
whatever it looks like.
Mhm.
So when you think of this theory, it becomes a really different perspective to start to begin to maybe open up to the idea that maybe our villains are our greatest gurus, our
True.
Mhm.
teachers.
Mhm. Mhm.
We can't villainize them in this theory because we're like, wait, what did my soul actually learn because that happened?
Well,
Because
and if you
they did,
villainize,
yeah,
you are the victim,
right? Then you
right?
are
So then
the
you're
energy
playing.
black,
Mhm.
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you stay out of victim,
Neutral.
thinking
Mhm.
that you don't have a choice, the choice
Mhm.
is, will I turn towards the version of me that came to believe that I deserved this treatment or that my
Mhm.
parent was this way, that I'm bad because that happened, so therefore I made it mean this about me. So
Mhm.
walking around when we can hold the part of the version of us that came to believe that thing was true when it was always a lie, that we were less
Mhm.
than or not good enough because we had an alcoholic parent. So therefore, again, the limitation becomes the soul lesson.
Interesting. I like that theory.
Yes,
Mhm.
it's very beautiful. And I don't know, for me, when I heard that, I was something in me was like, wow, it got my attention because my lived experience, it could be that I could blame other
Mhm.
people or certain things and say it's their fault.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
am a victim and I'm so mad and this happened to me and therefore I should
Yeah.
feel a certain way about that. When I'm like, wait, hold on. When I'm living
Mhm.
in that energy, that's the opposite of love. That's fear. That's
Yeah.
victim.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
when I'm not self-aware enough to say, oh, I know how that feels, it
Mhm.
creates suffering in my life and I'm stuck because
Yeah.
Yeah.
suffering, because I'm blaming someone else for my lived experience when I can turn it around and say, wait a minute, I choose to believe that there is a higher purpose for this, that love, my soul's love for myself to grow and expand, came and put myself into this family, in these experiences, in this
Mhm.
system, whatever it was, to grow and thrive, to get to the other side of it and be like, what a sacred honor
Mhm.
it was for me to walk myself through all of my whatever I want to call it, to get to be who I am now, where I get to have a lens of so much compassion for the versions of me that felt like a victim, and hold those versions and hold the versions of the other people in my life, because what must they have felt about themselves to live in a certain way? What does it all mean? Why are we even here? And to not judge
Well,
is good, bad, right, or wrong, but thank you.
mhm.
I grew because of that experience. Then it becomes something very different. I don't know.
Even if you have people that are which I think is always interesting and kind of makes me laugh because, spirit, I feel like spirit likes humor, is if even someone in that world, like Stacy, when you were talking about the girl at the airport or something, or you heard someone talking and they're unaware, like you think like they're unaware of what they're saying and judging, but that was a little catalyst for you because then you got to see the ping and instead of kind of giggling like, oh, that's really funny because this, you're just observing like, oh, she's in it, right? No good or bad, no, like, but you have the compassion because you're like, oh, I used to be there, and you just kind of laugh and you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, there's still people out there like that. Or it's kind of scary because you're like, wait, I was there and I'm not there anymore. Where am I? Who am I? That's also happens, right? You're like, wait a minute,
Every,
that was me, but now who am I? Where am I? Because I'm not identifying with that, but I'm not sure what I'm identifying, but it doesn't feel good anymore. Like that all, right? And you're like, how funny, because that person that sat next to you and did all that and said all that was probably in a soul contract in a small part, but still was there to be like, I just want to show you.
I'm gonna ping.
catalyst. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's a
And I
messenger.
love that.
She's a
A
messenger.
Yeah,
messenger.
yeah, or okay, yeah.
Messenger.
The
And I do
message
that.
is received.
Yeah.
And if we were just taught like every day to literally only look at ourselves and not look at anybody else, right? You just look at yourself. Like every day, if something happens and I feel like a annoyance or an anger or whatever, or a sadness, every time I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. Like, why is that still bugging me? Or why am I annoyed? I always ask why I am. I'm like,
Wow.
what? And then
Not
I'm like,
true.
oh, I'm afraid I'm not going to get this, or oh, I'm envious that that person does it. Like I can recognize it fast now, right? And
Yeah.
that's the growth, is I'm always asking when I feel it. All of a sudden, I'll get a feeling like if you're there and you're like, I'm annoyed. I'm like, oh my gosh, why am I annoyed with that girl saying that? Oh, I still whatever have an attachment because I'm worried, whatever it is. I don't know, but you know what I'm saying?
Well,
That's what every day. It's
it can
every day, all
only
day.
trigger something inside of you. So
Uh-huh.
Thich Nhat Hanh tells this, I'm going to wrap this up, but Thich Nhat Hanh says has this beautiful story around triggers. And he tells the story of this Buddhist monk that goes out and in a boat into the middle of this peaceful lake, and he's all alone and he's out there meditating in the middle of the lake in his boat. And he's there for a couple hours, just like getting centered and feeling connected to everything. And all of a sudden, he feels a boat come and hit his boat, and he keeps his eyes closed and he just starts to have this huge anger come up because he's like, what the heck? This person came and hit my boat. How dare they do that? What did they
Mhm.
think? Couldn't they see me? And then he opens his eyes and he sees there's no one in the boat that hit him. It was untouched.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
hit him
yeah.
and started laughing because suddenly he had the
Mhm.
self-realization, my anger
Mhm.
lived in me. That thing just triggered what was already in me. It wouldn't have been triggered if it didn't live in me.
Yeah, nobody was doing it to you.
Nobody was doing it to you. It was nobody in that
Yeah,
boat.
yeah,
So
it's a great.
when we
Yeah.
start to
Mhm.
realize that all of our triggers, the messengers bringing a message, have nothing, they don't shoot the messenger. There's a reason they
Mhm.
say that. Like
Yeah.
they had a purpose. They were a catalyst for further
Yeah.
growth, deeper
Yep.
acceptance of the version of you that's still judging something.
Mhm.
And when you can sit there and hear someone saying those things or reading
Mhm.
this thing or feeling this thing, your power lies in the freedom to let that be because it
Mhm.
doesn't trigger you anymore because you have the strength and you're a big enough being to say, bless that and let it be. They're on
Mhm.
their path and their own timing is theirs. Mine is mine. It doesn't make one ahead or behind the other because time is relative.
Right.
We're just
Mhm.
on this, we're on our path. And
Mhm.
and it may look messy and we want to straighten it up or fix it or clean it up, but it's that's not our job. But we can
Mhm.
shine and we can advocate with a heart full of love. And that's, I think, why we're here.
Yep.
And Stacy, I want to say, like, first of all, does it feel complete what we did? Are you feeling more complete there, the work that we
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was really good because it helped me kind of figure out why the heck I was feeling like that. 'Cause I keep like, what is it the root of that? Like why? And this kind of helps me see it. Thank you. Yeah, it really feels good.
beautiful?
I know I need to work on.
Well, I want to ask you, is it true that you are unsafe
No,
or have ever been
no,
unsafe?
no.
Beautiful. So, in the world where you have your power back and you are free to always choose love, what world becomes available to Stacy now?
Unlimited.
Limited.
Mhm.
How I want you to breathe it in, like close your eyes. This is an identity shift, a perspective shift. You are free. You are powerful to choose in any given moment love
Mhm.
and compassion for yourself and everything that is. Breathe it in. Like, what? Who do you get to be now? Who do you get to be in a world where you're safe and you're empowered and you're free?
I get to be me.
Mhm.
Truly me.
You're safe to be authentically you, to speak from your heart with compassion for
Yeah.
all beings and all things, and give honor to what is and where they are on their own journey here in this existence, and let them be. Like, bless it and let it be.
Mhm.
That was one of my favorite teachings from a teacher some years ago. Like
Mhm.
I we would do this meditation, I'll do it maybe next time we connect and meet, is this idea that everything that is, whether it's in front of us, around us, below, above, like in every direction in the periphery of our bubble, are we willing to just bless it and let it be? Almost like we have this bubble around us that's permeable. We allow things to kind of come. It's a noble threshold of ours. And it can have a mirror-like effect if we like it to, if we need to kind of contain and gather in our power again and become resourced again and realize that nothing, my peace is here. When I'm centered and grounded and keep coming back home, I am always safe because I
Yeah.
trust myself to know how to hold the versions of me that need the resource of compassion that already lives in me.
Yep.
I'm never not safe.
Yeah.
That changes my whole world.
Yep.
Mhm. That's
That's
good.
the work. So
Yeah.
your workshop becomes, how can I stay in a state of being to know that I'm safe to always carry and connect to myself when I feel triggered?
Yeah.
That resource is here.
Yep.
That's the workshop. So when you get triggered, you're like, aha, there's the messenger. Here's the message. Here's my trigger. This is how I hold myself. This is who I be. And it softens and on you go. And you keep doing that. And then
Mhm.
you're like, suddenly you're not triggered. Everything's just okay,
Mhm.
Yeah.
messy. That's how it's supposed to be. It's not good,
Yeah.
bad, right, or wrong. It just is. I'm not attached. That's
Mhm.
the Buddhist, like that's Zen. It's like a state of bliss when you are not attached to people and things being a certain way for you to have your inner peace.
True.
Yeah,
That's
that's freedom.
that's freedom.
Freedom. So watch as life will show you now opportunities to level up to the level of freedom that you are
Yeah.
and be the resource. And I'm going to check in with you, Stacy. I'm going to say what's happened in the last week or two as I connect to you and say, what have you noticed? And you're going to be blown away because life is always either mirroring, like, are you sure? Are you sure you did this work? How deep did it go?
Yeah.
Let's see who she bees in this moment.
Mhm.
Or it's going to synchronize and show you something like unto this. It's gonna gift you something. So be
Yeah.
aware. I love this. I love this with clients as I sit with them. I connect back after, the next week and I'm like, okay, tell me what happened this week. And they're like, you're gonna
Mhm.
die. Guess what happened? This happened, or this person, the neighbor said this, or I had an
Mhm.
opportunity to show up in the love that I know that I am. Holy cow, how does that work? It's because we have an energetic signature, fingerprint, and then we send out a signal unaware. It's sent out from our reticular
Mhm.
activity activated system through our subconscious, and we're sending out a signal, and like energy matches with like energy.
Mhm.
So pay attention. What's the signal we're sending out? Is it lack or fear?
Mhm.
Right. That's not one I want to send
Lack or
out.
love, fear or love?
I don't want
Mhm.
lack and fear, but I want love and abundance.
Yep,
Mhm.
absolutely. So what are you drawing into yourself without even knowing it? People be like, why does this keep happening? Pay attention. What's
Yeah.
your frequency? Where are you leaning into?
Mm.
It's your choice. We get to choose what our reality is. I'd way
Mhm.
rather choose love and open instead of my fear suffering pattern that I was in without knowing it. But you
Right.
don't know what you don't know. But I believe that uncomfortability, when we can finally tune in, like, there's so much discord, dis-ease in my emotional world and mental capacity, just living in the past and the future. And that becomes eventually physical disease.
True.
So when we can step into these places of flow and like non-attachment, we're suddenly free. And when
Mm.
our body is in peace, and you're like, our parasympathetic system is rest and digest, and suddenly life is easier because we're in the
Mhm.
flow. We're not fearing what's coming next because we trust ourselves to get through it because we've been
Mhm.
through anything. So, okay, enough. I keep reiterating the same thing. You guys, thank you for
Great.
being here. I
Oh,
love the conversation.
Thank you.
Okay,
you know,
so you feel complete now, Stacy.
what'd you say?
You feel complete now?
Totally.
Okay, so
Thank
the
you.
invitation here is our hypnagogic is right as we're falling asleep, and our hypnopompic state is right when we're waking up, and that's when we're in theta state, and our subconscious mind is dominant.
Mm.
When we were kids, we were in theta state till we were about 7 years old. So all of those
Mhm.
beliefs we came to believe about ourselves are subconscious because we were in theta state.
Ah.
When we're in that theta state, that is the perfect opportunity to connect our thoughts and our feeling around I am free,
Mm.
I am safe, I
Mm.
am empowered by the power of love at all times. What
Hmm.
world do I get to live in as I'm free? Who do I get to be now? And take the feeling, so the emotion, the energy of the emotion with the thought is where what creates it's like a superpower to attract and create the signal that we're sending out because we're doing it without consciousness. It's subconscious
Wow.
becomes our signal. So that is always my invitation with clientele. Before you're going to sleep and as you're waking up, and any moment you feel triggered, you go back to, oh, I'm powerful. I am. That those statements, the power of our mind and our words, the way they vibrate, I am, are so powerful.
Mm.
So use those things, reiterate the feeling that you have when I'm free and I'm powerful and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can do anything. I'm limitless. I'm
Hmm.
unlimited.
Limit.
Yeah, I would say
Mhm.
I'm limitless. I am limitless because unlimited subconsciously has an un. Like
True.
as
Mhm.
I've been taught these things, I'm like, really? And
Yeah.
they're like, never use a negative in your subconscious because there's a seed that's planted that we're not even aware of. So
Ah.
always, I am limitless, right?
Limitless.
Yeah. So reiterate it, keep saying it. And within it creates a new neural pathway, literally every time you think it and feel it. And now that becomes your new default. You're no longer you're no longer being driven 95% of the time by subconscious thoughts that are negative, that you aren't even aware of. That's
Yeah.
making you react in ways that you're like, why am I reacting? So, okay, so there it is. Thank you. Thank you
Love
for
it.
being here. Thank
So
you
many
for
good
everyone
things.
who stayed to watch this. I'm so glad you came. I love you, Stacy. Thank you
Love
Izzy, for
Thanks
being here.
for
Anyone else who's watching this. So much love to all of you. I love and believe in every one of you. Okay. Thank you, Stacy,
thank
for
you.
willing to show up
Yeah,
like that. It
thank
means,
you.
okay. Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.